Too few planes were shot down to interrupt the bombing raids. The terror in the air continued. Civilians moved out of their villages into the hills. They dug caves in the hillside where the bombs would not find them. When marching columns were caught by aircraft in the mountain passes, they were easy targets for the Reggio's bombs, guns, and gas. The Disparata Squadron's number 1 returns to base, piloted by Mussolini's son-in-law, the Minister of Propaganda, Count Galeazzo Ciano. The tide of war had turned against Haile Selassie. He drove north to the front to consult his commanders and rally the dejected troops. Some warriors responded to their emperor's call and went back to battle, but it was too late. Badoglio had banned the foreign press from the front line. Now he invites them to witness the war's decisive battle, the attack on Amba Aradam, mountain fortress of Ras Mulugeta. If Ras Mulugeta's army of 80,000 could be crushed, only the emperor would stand between the Italians and Addis Ababa. Aerial surveys revealed Ras Mulugeta's weak point. The Italian attack would come from the south. A 9-day siege began. The Italians closed in under cover of night and Around Amba Aradam, the Ethiopians saw the Italian army marching up the slopes towards them. Ras Mulugeta's drums beat the alarm. For days, the mountain fortress had been bombarded by aircraft and artillery. Ras Mulugeta just sat, bewildered and shell-shocked in his cave, incapable of action.
This is what I'm talking about. You understand? Because people come to be a part of your team and you refuse to treat us equally. No, not disrespectful.
Amba Aradam was taken. The road south was open. 6,000 Ethiopians had died on Amba Aradam. 15,000 were killed in the next 3 days, cut down by the Regia Aeronauticas machine guns or burned alive by mustard gas. One of the dead was Ras Mulugeta's own son, killed in command of the rear guard. When Ras Mulugeta turned back to mourn over the body, he too was killed by a bullet from the sky. Ethiopian resistance was falling apart. The surviving armies retreated south, demoralized and sick, carrying their wounded and mourning their dead. Ras Imru's army was destroyed in the Battle of Shireh. Ras Kassa and Ras Seyum were now utterly defeated in Tembien. When they reached their emperor, they had no troops left. Finally, in the last desperate battle, the emperor's own forces were massacred at Lake Ashangi. The war was lost. European governments were deaf to Ethiopia's appeals. Africa was too remote. But foreign sympathizers sent medical supplies. Some even joined.
Rastafari. Blessings, blessings, blessings.
Rastafari.
Blessed, Sister Leah. Yes, greetings, peace, and perfect love. I give thanks to the family. Rastafari, better said. Better step is the family. We give thanks to one and all joining I this light here, as I and I are here to commemorate the Yekatit Azra who led the 12th of Yekatit, 19th of February in this year, and I celebrate on the 20th leap year. It is of the 1937 massacre which took place in Ethiopia at Addis Ababa, even at Debla Labanos, northern shore. I give thanks to the family that's on here. And I will be showing a interesting documentary this light here. We'll be highlighting the history of the moments leading up to the incident which took place, the massacre in Addis, leading and giving an explanation and background of the characters involved, in the throwing of the grenades and the background of Graziani and those enemy forces. And it's very interesting, so I give thanks, for ones who has joined in with I this light here, where two or three are gathered, his name is there. This is presented to this day here by the Brooklyn Ayabingi House, the Theocracy Reign Divine Order of the Ayabingi. So I give thanks, right, orderly, as I go up. And I would like to salute each and every one who's joined in with I. I would like for everyone to likewise introduce themselves as I are all a family here. But firstly, I would like to mute up the mics, please. I would love to start off with a Isla salute. I would love to start with a Isla salute unto His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I. Accordingly, for granting I this Iowa and giving I the Ivine Irit and giving I the sight that I can see and observe these histories and apply it to I liberty in this day and teach it unto the generation to come. Bless the itinerary, blessed family, Rastafari live. And I say gloriful in word, gloriful in sound, gloriful in the eye of the eye of living eye, Emperor Haile eyes, Selassie the first. As I was in the beginning, the eyes now and forever shall be. The world without end, the power of the King of Kings, Emperor Haile eyes, Selassie the first. Mighty eye. And I was glad when he said unto I, come let I yard into the house of the eye of living eye. And I feet must stand within the eye gate to Ethiopia. Ethiopia built as an ancient city which is compact together. Whether the tribes go up, the tribes of the living eye, Emperor Haile Selassie the first unto the testimony of Isaac, to give yanful idols unto the name of the King of Kings. But they have set the tones of judgment to judge men, tones of the house of the great King David. They have set the tones of judgment to judge men, tones of the house of the great King David. I commute for right. And I pray for the love of Ethiopia, and I must prosper that love thee. The love within I hearts and prosperity within I palaces. Why I brethren and I sister and saints, I love within I. Because of the house of the living I highly yes, and that's the first. And I must be gathered. And that's the first. And I must be gathered. They can move far right. Pretty. They can move far right. Pretty. Just giving up feedback. giving a feedback. Time Maya. Time Maya.
Yeah, forward. Forward Congo.
Blessed I, Rastafari.
Blessed I,
Rastafari.
I listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Congo. Forward up.
Yeah, it's giving a feedback, like I'm hearing myself repeating. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Still?
Yeah. Yeah, like,
Is
bless
anyone
I.
else here? Make sure that I have only one device with the volume. Is anyone else hearing the bridge and voice repeating? Iman is not hearing it as such. How was
Yes, we're
this?
hearing an echo.
Yes, as well. Yes, as well.
Yeah, I broke both of them with an echo. Yeah, I broke both of them with an echo just now. Yeah, I'm not sure it's feeding back through the eye. Nice
back through the eye. Nice brass.
Check it now again.
Yeah, like, uh, no, delay. It's still there, but it delayed. No, it delayed more.
It's still there, but it delayed.
It delayed more. Art.
Is it still there?
You're like, no, I ain't hear nothing. Wait.
Forward the announcements.
Yeah, Rastafari. Glory, glory. Yeah, it sound good there. I don't know if one could hear, right?
Yes, I, Rastafari. You're coming through clear.
Give that. The earth is that the I am and the fullness thereof, world and I that dwell therein. For the eye has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. For who shall I send into the hills of the ever living I and Haile Selassie the first? Or who shall stand within the high places? Desire and I that have a clean hands and a pure heart, was not fallen I thy life unto vanity, nor sworn deceitfully. And I shall receive the blessings from the living I and Haile Selassie the first, righteousness from the eye of I and thy salvation. For I am the generation of them that seek thee, that seek thy face, so I Haile Selassie the first. So lift up your heads, O ye Ethiopians, and be lifted up, ye ever living doors, and the King of Zion shall yet. Who is this King of Zion? And Haile Selassie the first, the head strong and mighty, the is mighty and bad. So lift up your heads, O ye Ethiopians, and be lifted up, ye ever living doors, and the King of Zion shall yet. Who is this King of Zion? And Haile Selassie the first, thou art the King of Zion, thou art the King of hosts. But blessed is I that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the ways of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. For I light is in the Lord, the living I am Haile Selassie the first, and in thy word sound and power do I meditate day and night. For I must be like the tree that is planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth I good fruit in due season. I life and I countenance shall not wither. Whatsoever I do, it must prosper. But the wicked are not so, but are like the chaff which the word sound and power drive the door. Therefore the wicked shall not stand in his judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. But the living I am highly I, Selassie the first, know the ways of the righteous. The ways of the wicked must perish forever and ever. For prince and princesses must get out of Egypt, Babylon. Ethiopia has stretched forth her hand unto the living highly I, Selassie the first. Eli Selassie the first, I find majesty. The I will come into I hearts and dwell into the paths of righteousness. Lead I and I. Help I to forgive. That I and I must be forgiven. Teach I and I love loyalty on earth as it is in Island Mount Zion. I join I the I wise mind, knowledge, and I will stand in to do the I will. The I blessed be to I and I, O highly I, Selassie the first. That the hungry be fed, naked clothed, the sick nourished, the aged protected, and the infants cared for. I live I and I from the hand of I and I evil enemies, that I and I must prove fruitful in the first highways. When I and I enemies are past in the cave in the depths of the sea, the depths of the earth, and the belly of a beast, grant I and I a place in the eye loving King Manfred. Should the eye of the King of Kings, the eye over all lords, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. The elect of thyself and the lights of the universe, I and I find majesty, I highly I, Selassie the first ancient king of Irish. Thou the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning without end, the first and forever. The technical of thy faith, the ruler of thy universe. Thou the only high priest of the order of Melchizedek, and long live it and reign it forever and ever. Blessed be the name of the Most High, highly high, Selassie the first. Who in the God high, highly high, Selassie the first. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? False kings have set themselves, and the rulers have taken a council together against his majesty and against Sinai his anointed saints, saying, come let they break Sinai bands asunder and cast away any cause from amongst them. But the eye who seated in the heavens shall laugh, I shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath and vex them in his sore displeasure. But yet have I set thy king upon the high hill of Zion, as now declared the creed that the eye has said unto I and I. I and I are thy sons and thy daughters, and in this day they have forgotten I and I. Ask of the eye, and the eye shall give I and I the healing for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt braid the heathen with a rod of iron, and shalt dash them into pieces like a potter's vessel. So be wise now, therefore, ye kings, and be instructed, ye false judges of the earth. Serve the ever living eye, highly I, Selassie the first, with fear, rejoice and trembling. Yes, I and I, the sons and daughters of the eye, lest he be angry and perish along the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed I and I that put I and I trust in the Most High, highly I, Selassie the first. I pray thee, I, mighty I, keep not the eye silent, O I and I, Father, and hold not the eye peace, and be not still, O I and I, King. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against I and I, thy people, and has consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more remembered. But they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against the eye. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, Jebel and Ammon and Amalek and the Philistines and the inhabitants of Tyre, Asser and all is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Selah. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb, yea, all the princes of Zebah and of Zemunah, who said, let us take to ourselves the house of God in possession. O I and thy king, make them like a wheel, as a stubble before the wind, and as the fire burn the wood, and as the flame set the mountains on fire, so persecute them with thy tempest. Fire, make them afraid with thy storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O I and thy king. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is highly high, Selassie the first, are the most high over all the earth. Bless thy majesty, I highly high, Selassie the first. Keep and guide I and I majesty. Ever keep I and I as the apple of thy eyes, of thine eye. Cover I and I under thy feathers, and under thy wings shall I and I trust. Thy truth shall be I and thy shield and buckler. Righteousness and judgment are the habitation of thy throne. Truth and mercy go before thy face. Grant I and thy wise mind, knowledge and understanding to do thy will, I and thy majesty. Be over I and thy gathering, and show I and thy eye vine way, that I and I may walk within the eye vine integrity of the eye. So I and I the eye vine irids that thou hast given unto I and thy ancient ancestors, who stood up with the eye. For I and I know that there is no death in the eye. So that I and I pray, live amongst I and I, that I and I may put these things in remembrance. Bring I and I in these Iowas to see what took place in them times there during the war and the resistance movement. Give thanks and praise, brethren and sisters. I let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our heart really acceptable in the sight of the Most High, highly high, Selassie the First. Thou art I and I strength and I redeemer. I would long live it and reign it forever and ever. Selah. As brethren and sisters, give thanks and praise, I at this hour, and I, as I and I give I and I majesty the Ivine salute, and I say Ivine salute to the brethren and sisters, and I would love for everyone to introduce themselves to the family. And for one, Island Culture, reasoning from out of Brooklyn, Holyoke, from the Ayabingi house. Perfect love to the family. Listen.
Eileen, so that's the first. Ross Jeremiah, Nyabingi House of Brooklyn, New York. And I give thanks for the Iowa and for the commemoration of such an event, knowing the stand that Ethiopia has taken throughout the ages and the names of the forgotten fighters, and worse upon this occasion, the martyrs, those who were not even taking part in the war, innocent bystanders, man, woman, and children. For the cry of the innocent blood of I and I people. So and I give thanks for the observation to reach out as a family amongst I and I as ice and iron, and the countenance of one brightened another, And I will ask ones to introduce themselves. As I see Virgin Benjamin, Sister Janelle, Brother Kamar, and I would ask ones to feel free so and I can ride up with it in a harmony.
Greetings, Rastafari, love and honor to ones and all on the call this evening. This is Sister Janelle. I'm in Addis Ababa, currently on the call from Addis Ababa. They had a commemoration ceremony today at Yekatit Square for Martyrs Day, and I saw several Christian community members walking to the churches because today is also Mikhail Day, lighting candles and singing songs of martyrdom in the city. So, I give thanks to be here to learn even more about this day and, what our Ethiopian brothers and sisters have endured historically through the passage of time. And, give thanks for ones and ones for organizing this gathering. Rastafari bless.
Give thanks, saints. Welcome. Brother Nigel, I know that I was on the line from early. As I and I are looking forward to more strength within the coming years, as this is the beginning of things to come, as is already within that observance within Ethiopia as the heart of the matter. And I see the
Yeah,
current situation within Ethiopia also. So and I want to be more familiar with one another. So I want not to feel a way to introduce themselves. And I
yes,
see
I.
and I
This
even
is
have the brother Ronald Pennycook on the line also. Long time Federation administrator. And I give thanks for the presence of the brethren also. Wants to feel free as I and I moving forward within the timing. Likewise, and I apologize for the early situation with the audio as technology advances, but he give I knowledge to figure out witty inventions. And I have Sister Vanessa Davidson,
yeah.
Sister
This is Brother
Willetta,
Nigel.
Hailey,
Highly blessed. Out of
Rastafari.
Texas. Just give thanks to be in the chat room and listen to the word song.
Welcome.
And where's that hailing from, Congo?
Texas.
Texas.
Texas. Give thanks. Brother Benjamin, Brother Pennycook.
Yes, sir. You can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Rastafari.
You can hear me, right?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, I. Well, last day I say, I am Ronald Pennycook, member of the Ethiopian World Federation and a member of the Nyabingi House. Yeah. So that's who I am. And I'm here listening to the program that you're presenting tonight. I'm just here listening.
Give thanks, brethren. Rastafari.
Yes, sir. That's Gideon. Ask Gideon if we can
At the same
introduce yourself.
time, while I'm not waiting, and I know that certain ones may not be as when I would say glory be unto the word, glory unto the Son, glory unto the power of the true living I, Haile Selassie the first. As I was not getting, so that shall be that without end. Selah. Of things to come, based on the testimony of the ancients that shall be finite. So, as I see the Battle of Adwa is approaching, and I know that all these events are connected within the prophecy. And for the cause, I would just love to utter a portion of
The sound chipping, the audio chipping.
still Haile Selassie the first. Still Haile Selassie the first.
Little bit, little crunchy, like. Blessed, give thanks and praise God. Yes, I am. Well, and I give thanks still, as the brethren is organizing the audio, and I give thanks for the input, knowing that this I wine I observing is particularly of that day in which there was a gathering held in Addis Ababa, where Graziani was commemorating a child born in the royal family of Italy. And they decided that Addis Ababa was the capital of what they call Italian East Africa, which included Eritrea, parts of Somalia, and also Libya, right? And they decided, well, this was the capital and the best place to commemorate this event and for all the clergy. And they said they wanted to do something like emulating His Majesty by giving out to the poor and so forth. So in front of the palace, the Gannett Lowell Palace, or what they would have it, which they would have today as the Haile Selassie University. They gathered thousands of people there, and knowing at the same time there were some Ethiopians and Eritreans who were plotting a move against Graziani, which ultimately led to them throwing grenades and even Graziani getting hit, you know. So this is the beginning of the events that led up to the massacre. And knowing this was taking place in 1936, I mean, it's pretty high, 1937. By this time, His Majesty has already exited Ethiopia, was fighting the war front diplomatically. It's communications with different governments and even to the communication with the resistant fighters on the ground in Ethiopia, like Ras Abebe Adagai, or like Sasa is Hailu, so, um um, radio. His Majesty's Ras Imru operated. His Ras Imru was left as a regent in Ethiopia, so the communication was still functioning while His Majesty was abroad. But one of the weapons that the Italians employed were leaflets, flying down leaflets, telling people that the emperor has abandoned them and that, they should just submit to Italy and recognize Italy. And this was intended to break the hope of the people, you know? So you see the mindset at even the time when they were establishing racist regimes in Libya, in Eritrea, in Somalia, and now in Ethiopia, the same fascist white supremacy segregation they were trying to implement in Ethiopia. And these kind of conditions, you know, led the Ethiopians and the Eritreans to make this plot here now, to make an attack at the head of the military, which is Graziani at the time, appointed by Mussolini. And in turn to this attack, there was the most deadliest massacre at the time to this day has not got any recompense. Massacre of over 30,000 Ethiopians. Yes, sir. So I will be writing up documentary, as I said, will go into depth of these things here, and I would love to even bring portions of His Majesty's speech, his address to the League, not the 1936 address, but a 1937 address, addressing even these atrocities that took place here in 1937 in Addis Ababa.
Yeah. What song that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, if anyone wants to bring a sound of remembrance of the Iowa, Zion and I are looking to go forward up into the documentary within about another 10 minutes or so. So I can even bring forward a sound of remembrance. Or they have documented in His Majesty's autobiography speaking of such things. Yes? Yeah, man. So, yeah, man, as we say, as Rastafari family, so like as I and I are presenting, we love to give space for ones even to share, even in this hour. Yes, sir. Yekatit, let. Blessed Rastafari.
Has my audio improved?
It sounds clear there.
Audio improved.
Oh, it double up. Repeat. Latency. Rastafari. Yes, as the brethren highlighted likewise, I and I will look forward to in the oncoming years to even make it a more grand celebration, Yes, I am. Peace, brethren. Yes, I and I are linked up, Yes, I am. But yes, usually during celebrations as such, because I and I throughout the years observed the May 5th victory where I and I would often recall enough in a lot of the war, the victory, what took place during the 5 years, what took place during the time of His Majesty in exile, correlated to the scriptures and how the revelation come forward in this time. Revelation such as Revelation 17 and Revelation 12 and so forward. You know? Yes, sir.
Okay.
So yeah, man, I give thanks, sire. Yeah, man. So yes, sire. You know, like I said, I have some songs where I want to bring in regards to His Majesty address to the league. Because, yeah, I see His Majesty spoke with that two-edged sword as the scripture highlighted out of his mouth. So know that the word was sharp. You know. So I will be putting links in the messages to where ones can access what I and I are making, where I and I are presenting this night here, like the documentary. It can be found on YouTube, and certain portions where I and I would love to highlight, even from the second volume of the autobiography of His Imperial Majesty and Brightness. So that's the first. Yes, I would love to bring a short piece just to wet the palate a bit, you know, before I go in car. I wanna bring I and I theoretically likewise, you know. Yeah, you know, I said once when His Majesty was a child and he was being interviewed, they asked him a certain portion of the scriptures, and they say he explained it as if he were there himself. You know, so I want to bring I and I self in these hours. I want to feel, I want to feel that Iritones are feeling at that time, even if it's the fear, the anxiety, the bravery, the sadness, the joy, the victory, you know, and I give thanks. So, and I want to bring a small portion, right? Um, Not the whole chapter, but this is from the fourth chapter of the second um, volume of the autobiographies of Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First. Glory to word, glory to song, glory to the powers of Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First. So during our secluded life, we often heard about the atrocities committed against our people. Their sufferings increased the weight of our sadness and made us nervous. As the result, we endured many sleepless nights. We heard that in December 1936, with Tahas 1929, the Italians killed the son of Prince Ras Casa. The jazz match won the Besawusen, the jazz match Abara, and the jazz match As for Wusen. They that captured Ras Imru in February 1937, and that Ras Desta Damtu and the jazz match Bayan Merid were captured and killed. The jazz match Gebre Mebriam died in battle, and especially we were bitterly disheartened on hearing about the merciless carnage of the people of Addis Ababa on account of the attempted assassination of Graziani on February 19th, 1937. It is Yekatit 12, 1929. When a bomb was thrown at him, we sent the following message to all churches. The whole world knows the bad luck that befell Ethiopia while she was a member of the League of Nations, in which I had placed full confidence. I asked time and again that the League's obligation and agreements be honored, but until now, no aid has been given to my people. Yet I will not lose hope about the return of my country's independence, because I believed in the end. God's judgment will eventually visit the weak and the mighty alike, according to what each deserves. Until such time, I will toil patiently for the benefit of my people. Yes, sir. You know, so that's just a little touch of it, you know. It goes into different portions where His Majesty sent out different letters of communications, communicating these same kind of reasonings of what was taking place in Ethiopia giving the people a live look because then time there wasn't no YouTube, there wasn't no X and Twitter and them kind of thing, yeah. You know? So when they were saying His Majesty flee or abandon, no, His Majesty was carrying a fight to a different realm, man. Yes, sir. So I not give thanks for such portion. As I said, through the IY and I will be highlighting more sounds and more scripts on this islandful occasion, correlating it not only to scripture, but even to what's taking place right now, because we see a great war even taking place in the Holy Land as we speak. But it's not from directly outside forces, but outside forces do have a hand in it. Nonetheless, it's a war amongst people in the Holy Land. Yeah, so I give thanks for the moment. Rastafari did by that. Brother Jeremiah?
Yes, I'm still not 100%. So the worst thing is disturbing on one average when the microphone is not in order. How is it coming across? You're still getting a slight feed forward.
Slightly, you know, it's real close, but yeah. You can hear the eye still.
And I give thanks for constantly being able to learn new things. Because even though I would be aware of the incident that occurred and attempted assassination of Graziani, there is still an in-depth knowledge that I personally was not aware of. And to even understand that the individuals involved, they could have compromised themselves with the invader and just hope to live a nice life at the mercy of the Italians. They didn't have to choose to sacrifice themselves and make that attempt against the enemy. And with the false propaganda that was disseminated from that time, and I still hear it up until now from some of our brothers and sisters who would say Selassie run away from Ethiopia and his England have to save him. And so give thanks for the detailed information and even the witnesses of those who were even involved in the war and who could even remember from youthful days, as one generation shall declare it to the next. So I could separate truth from error historically within the significance of what Ethiopia represents within being volunteer Ethiopians for the cause, no matter how bad the situation may look. What I see also throughout the years is how what I observe Ethiopia facing any conflict that is detrimental to Ethiopia is more from internally. And I can see from the history and the documentation of even the Askaris and the Dubats, who themselves are Ethiopians, are within relation of some type of way, but they're able to be manipulated to fight against their own people. Whether it's for whatever promises were made by the Italians or so. And I know that even now you have ones who sometimes make bad decisions that affect I as a group and as a family, as I observing what is happening now in Africa itself. And for the reason why Ethiopia became the headquarters for the Organization of African Unity, and I see these things are now being attempted to be destabilized by external and internal forces. So commemorating the martyrs, as I say again, there were ones who were not involved in any warfare, and they lost their lives because of the rage and the anger of the retribution of the Lotalians. And one thing I learned also is that not even all of the Italians were in agreement with this invasion. And they themselves eventually turned on themselves, as I know the history of Mussolini. But likewise, other individuals who thought they were able to get away, things still took place, and I see that the very patriarch who coronate Thy Majesty lost faith and take side, thinking that the Italians wouldn't be as brutal as they were. So I just pray that once I have time to even reflect on what the situation is, instead of taking side one against another without having full information. So this Iowa, as I say, and I'm looking forward to strengthening it year to year as the other days that I observe of great significance. This is a one to encourage a one not to lose faith, no matter how bad the situation may look. Because, as I said again, these individuals were educated, they had access to live a good life according to the standards of the time, but they chose to move amongst the resistance fighters, even though at time they themselves were not trusted by their own Ethiopians. You see. So, as Her Majesty, work is a peculiar work. Sometimes I may not understand what exactly an individual is destined to do or what work the king set in towards. And it's by the fruit you shall know them. In the latter time of the results, you'll see what was actually going on behind the scenes. So I give thanks for this day to get a little more detailed knowledge of what took place with the massacre. And the numbers are still disputed up until today towards exactly how many died. And as I know, there are things that ended up in Italy that were stolen and looted, and some of these discussions are stirring up again. You see, and as I as the witnesses of those who heard from those before I to continue holding that fire and that torch and putting it on top of the house top, because they can't erase this history because it's written in blood. And for I to help ones to be aware of it is for more strength unto strength, as I can see now, as even the elder ones on the line can testify of how much more knowledge towards the history and the glory of Ethiopia has surfaced since the earlier days that they were treading. That many people now are the ones saying, I never know that Ethiopia is the only country in Africa never conquered. So this history can't be erased. So it's more detail upon detail, for half the story has never been told. So as I'm about to go forward in the video footage, Culture, will I be streaming it, or do I want to share it? Unmute the file.
Please share it, Russ. I pray that.
Okay, so within the iris of what I was meditating on earlier, within the prophecy, I would just love to be short as possible within the word, but hoping ones get the fullness at the same time. The book of Joel, chapter 3. For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted.
Mute up, brother Josh. I pray that.
I pray that, my brother. Sorry about that.
And parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head. Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things.
Right.
The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye may remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for the King of Kings has spoken it. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves, and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about thither. Cause thy mighty ones to come down, O hail Selassie the first. Let the heathen be wakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the King of glory is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The King of kings also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. And the heavens and the earth shall shake, but the King of glory will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. So shall you know that I am the King of glory, the Almighty, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Then shall Jerusalem be holy, and there shall no strangers pass through her any more. And it shall come to pass in that day that the mountains shall drop down new wine, and the hills shall flow with milk, and all the rivers of Judah shall flow with waters, and a fountain shall come forth of the house of Haile Selassie the first, and shall water the valley of Shittim. Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness, for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in their land. But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. For I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed, for hail Selassie the first dwelleth in Zion. So let the words of my mouth, meditation of my heart, be freely and humbly acceptable in thy sight, O hail Selassie the first. And thy strength and thine redeemer, thy who long liveth and reigneth for ever and ever. Bless thine eye and sanctify thine eye, and cause the light of thy eye countenance to shine upon thine eye. Cause thy face to shine upon thine eye, that thine might be free from the hands of thine enemies, from this time forth, henceforth, and forever. Give thanks.
Rastafari, remembering the Iowa Yekatit Azrahulet, and I give thanks to the martyrs that day, and I will hear the name of such. Yes, sire. You know, and I will hear of the two brethren who plan these plots. Yes, sir. So the brethren cue up the sound, and I give thanks. Knowing that, you know, it's a strong day, as some would say, the weekday. You know, so I don't want to keep ones too late, but I glad for the moment. And I can share these portions, Yes, sir. As I said, I will put links to these documents where I will be sharing where ones can sip it up at different times because this I want us to do, as a brethren say, annually, you know, so teach it to the generation it teach ones of I history and teach ones of even being valiant, you know, and knowing of that true history is not what they may say on the corporate dominated media for the world and these other countries recognize Italy, but they didn't recognize the resistance fighters. And they moved from Addis and stationed at a different region. When the Italians were in Addis, they recognized the Italians, but they didn't recognize the Ethiopians. They spread a propaganda saying that His Majesty went into exile under the title Stafari and then go with the crown. And His Majesty denied that time. Yeah, man. You know, so that was part of the false propaganda that was going out at that time, man. You know? Yeah, man. So we give thanks for the word of God, you know? Yeah, Bridget. I don't know if they have it queued up there, so Russ. Yeah, man. I want to present this documentary. You know, it is put forward by Tariq Amba, Ethiopian. You know, we give thanks, you know, the lion story being told by the lion, you know, from that Ethiopian perspective. You know, we give thanks for all, you know, truthful documentary that comes out, you know what I mean? Yeah, man. Give thanks, I Rastafari, live the time. Yeah, man. So bless the ones and ones who are seated up with I and I once again. I am.
So bear with me. Please be
Documentary.
advised, some of the images presented will be graphic. This is the
Yes,
Yekatit
yeah.
12 monument in Addis Ababa. It stands outside the southern gates of what used to be the Gannet al-Ul Palace, now the main campus of Addis Ababa University. This palace was the site where one of the most vicious crimes committed by fascists anywhere began. The massacres of Yekatit 12 were a defining moment in the occupation of Ethiopia by fascist Italy and laid bare the lie that Italy had come to free Ethiopians from slavery and bring civilization. It is important that the memory of these atrocities is preserved, as we cannot allow these patterns to repeat. Fascism in various forms is still alive and well today. Yekatit 12 corresponds to the Gregorian calendar date of February 19, and it is on this date in 1937 the fascist forces launched this massacre in Addis Ababa that was remarkable in its brutality and sheer barbarism. This is the story of this horrific massacre. Some background on how this massacre came about. Italy had long had colonial designs on the Horn of Africa, formally establishing colonies in Italian Somaliland in 1880 and Eritrea in 1890. There was a desire to join these two territories by conquering Ethiopia. The Italians' attempt to do so ended with a crushing defeat at the Battle of Adwa on March 1st, 1896, which firmly established Ethiopia as a sovereign state to the colonial powers of Europe. However, there was a burning desire in the hearts of some Italians to avenge this loss, and under the direction of Italian Prime Minister and dictator Benito Mussolini, Italian forces invaded Ethiopia from Eritrea in the north and Italian Somaliland in the southeast on October 3rd, 1935. The war itself was a horror. Ethiopia had effectively been under an arms embargo for decades, thanks to being cut off from the coast by colonial powers. Its forces were equipped with mostly antique guns, spears, swords, and very few modern weapons. Yet, they fought valiantly against mechanized divisions and an Italian air force which used poison gas and other chemical agents in violation of the Geneva Convention. Following the defeat of Ethiopia's main forces at the Battle of Maicho on March 31st, 1936, it became apparent that the Italian army could not be held back. The army retreated in disarray through Wallo. Emperor Haile Selassie returned to Addis Ababa on May 1st, 1936, to a city terrified of what was coming. After a stormy meeting of a council of military leaders and nobles, it was decided that the government would abandon Addis Ababa, which was not defensible, for Gori in the west, and the imperial family would depart immediately for Jerusalem, with the emperor heading from there to appeal to the League of Nations in Geneva. On May 2, 1936, Emperor Haile Selassie, Empress Menen, certain members of the nobility and their families boarded the train to Djibouti and went into exile, while the government moved to Gore with the emperor's cousin, Lu'ul Ras Imru Haile Selassie, as Prince Regent. 3 days later, on the 5th of May, 1936, Italian forces under Marshal Pietro Badoglio occupied Addis Ababa. Benito Mussolini promptly went out onto the balcony of the Palazzo Venezia in Rome, and before wildly cheering crowds, proclaimed King Vittorio Emanuele III of Italy as Emperor of Ethiopia. Italy announced to the world that it had formed a new colonial entity called Italian East Africa. Yet contrary to Mussolini's declaration, Ethiopia was not Italian. While Italy controlled the major towns, much of the countryside and smaller towns were outside of their control. The regent, Lu'ul Ras Imru, led the remnants of the imperial guard against the Italians in the west, and the emperor's two sons-in-law, Ras Desta Damto and Dejazmach Bayena Merid led the army of the south against them for months. There was even an attempt in late July to recapture Addis Ababa by the brothers Dejazmach Wendosen Kasa, Dejazmach Abarra Kasa, and Dejazmach Asfawasen Kasa, sons of the senior prince Lu'ul Ras Kasa Hailu, together with Adwa veterans Dejazmach Balcha Safo and Balambaras, later Ras Ababa Aragai. Across the land, bands of resistance fighters were beginning to organize as the shock of the fall of the capital sank in. So the country was far from conquered and pacified, never mind colonized. However, it was important for the fascist authorities that Ethiopia appear conquered and pacified, so they set up government structures and began to call for Italians to come settle in their new empire. Initially, the victorious Marshal Badoglio, who had committed horrendous war crimes, was appointed as the viceroy or representative of the King Emperor of Italian East Africa. However, within a month, he had been given the honorary title of Duke of Addis Ababa and recalled to Italy to become the chief of the military staff there. He was replaced by his deputy, Marshal Rudolfo Graziani, known as the Butcher of Fezzan, for the atrocities he had previously carried out in Italian-ruled Libya. His biggest atrocities were yet to come. Rudolfo Graziani was born into the family of the village doctor of Filatino, Italy on August 11, 1882. After attending seminary school and being unable to afford the military academy of Modena, he instead joined the university to study law. He joined the Royal Italian Army as a reserve cadet while attending university in 1906 and passed a competitive test to qualify as a regular officer, becoming a second lieutenant in a grenadier regiment in Rome. He was first sent abroad to serve in Eritrea, where he learned Tigrinya and Arabic. He would become the youngest colonel in Italian history in 1918 during World War I. In 1930, he was appointed vice governor of the Libyan state of Cyrenaica and commander of Italian forces in Libya. During his 4 years in Libya, he earned the name Butcher of Fezzan among the Arabs due to his brutal suppression of the Senussi rebellion and the building of several concentration and labor camps where thousands of Libyans died. Many were hanged or shot, but most died of hunger and disease caused by the horrific conditions in these camps. In 1935, Graziani was appointed as governor of Italian Somaliland. He was there when war broke out and indeed was ordered to start the war by encroaching on Ethiopian territory by occupying the watering station of Welwel in the Ogaden. However, this southern front under his command became a secondary one to the main invasion from Eritrea in the north under General Emilio de Bono. Mussolini, however, replaced de Bono, whom he thought was too slow and conscious, with Badoglio, who unleashed chemical warfare and reached Addis Ababa swiftly. Graziani had hoped to reach Harar before the northern forces reached Addis, but although he didn't do that, he was rewarded by Mussolini with the rank of marshal and given the title Marchese of Negelli by the king. During a visit to an Ethiopian church in Jijjiga, he apparently fell into a deep pit hidden under a carpet, and ever after that had a deep suspicion of all the Orthodox clergy. He famously said the Duce will have Ethiopia with or without the Ethiopians. It was a declaration of intent. With Badoglio's departure, Marshal Graziani was made Viceroy of Italian East Africa in his place and set up his headquarters in Emperor Haile Selassie's Gannet al-Ul Palace. There are two other lead characters in this story. They are two young men from Eritrea, Mogas Askadom and Abraha Daboj, and they are interesting figures. Mogas Askadom was born in 1912 in Alfalba near Degamahare, Eritrea. Abraha Daboj was born in Ma'adu in Hamasin district of Eritrea in 1913. Due to the colonial policy that forbade the educating of natives beyond the 6th grade, these young, ambitious people did what many other Eritreans did, which was to cross the border into Ethiopia to pursue further education and social opportunities. Like many other daring youths, Abraha and Mogas were shot at as they crossed the border by Italian forces and were lucky to make it across alive. Both young men took advantage of the educational opportunities available in Addis Ababa. They joined the Emperor Menelik II school and pursued modern education. They already had command of their native Tigrinya and Italian, and they easily improved their Amharic and now learned French as well. They were in demand for their linguistic abilities. Mogas also had a good command of German and English. He even became a French teacher. With these skills and ability, Mogas found employment in the cartography section of the Addis Ababa Municipal Administration. While working there, he was accused of black market activities involving currency exchange and was arrested. He was required to find someone to sign documents and act as his guarantor in order to be freed from jail. He turned to his fellow Eritrean Abraha Debuch, who signed the papers. They became very close friends from then on. Abraha Debuch was a complex character. Both he and Mogus would have long carried resentment of the Italian colonial rule of their native Eritrea and their treatment of the population there. Abraha additionally had a deep hatred of the fascists and their racial theories. In 1936, Abraha Debuch married Wezoro Tadesech Stefanos, a relative of Ras Desta Damto. This was the same year that the fascists had occupied the capital and declared Ethiopia to be Italian. The fascists had begun to implement racial segregation in Ethiopia, which only increased public resentment and further inflamed the feelings of Abraha and Mogus. Yet Abraha, thanks to his skill in languages, was able to secure a job on the viceroy's staff on the fascist political bureau and may even have worked close to Graziani himself. His Eritrean origin, his fluency in Italian, and familiarity with Ethiopian society and the city opened many doors for him. He may also have used his marriage ties to Ras Desta's family to build contacts with the Patriot resistance while working in the viceroy's office. In order to build trust with the fascists, he may also have given them information about minor resistance activities while he passed on maps from the cartography office obtained from Mogas to the Patriots to help in their ultimately unsuccessful attempt to retake Addis Ababa. He was acting as a classic double agent, and Mogas, by assisting him, was as well. Both were officially employees of the colonial government. This raised concerns and suspicions about them among the resistance, and some were convinced that Abraha in particular was an Italian agent and a fascist collaborator, and so they kept their distance from him. Yet Abraha and Mogas had a big plan to strike at the heart of the fascist administration. An undercover member of the resistance named Simon Adefris met with them, introduced them to a former machine gunner of the Ethiopian army who was now fighting in the resistance. This soldier provided them with hand grenades and taught them how to use them. They were waiting for the right opportunity, and that opportunity would come thanks to an event in far-off Italy. On February 12, 1937, the Italian Crown Prince Umberto and Crown Princess Marie-José of Savoy gave birth to a son, Prince Vittorio Emanuele. The baby prince at that time was the second in line to the Italian throne occupied by his grandfather. It was a momentous occasion for the reigning elder line of the House of Savoy, whose lack of male heirs had made the possibility that the throne might pass to their Savoy-Aosta cousins increasingly likely. The king and his family were therefore particularly jubilant, and the event was celebrated throughout their realm. It was decided that the event deserved an appropriate public pageant of some sort in Addis Ababa as the capital of Italian East Africa. The authorities declared that the viceroy, as a representative of the King Emperor Vittorio Emanuele III, would distribute alms to the poor. This would be done at the Gannet-el-Ul Palace on February 19, or Yekatit 12 on the Ethiopian calendar, and officials of the colonial government, local leadership of the fascist party, collaborating Ethiopian nobility, and religious leaders were invited and told in no uncertain terms that they were expected to be there in honor of the newborn prince. The Coptic Archbishop of Ethiopia at the time was Abuna Kerlos. It was he who had crowned Emperor Haile Selassie in 1930, but he had submitted to the Italian when they seized Addis Ababa in May 1936. In July 1936, when the Patriot leaders had attempted and failed to recapture Addis Ababa, the Italians had managed to capture Abuna Petros, the bishop of Wello and eastern Ethiopia, who had been at the side of the Patriot leaders, urging the population to rise up against the invader. Abuna Kerlos, the archbishop, and the collaborating bishop of Gojam and western Ethiopia, Abuna Abraham, tried to convince Abuna Petros that he could serve and protect his flock better if he submitted to Italian rule and pledged loyalty to Vittorio Emanuele III as emperor. Abuna Petros is said to have responded that he recognized no flag other than Ethiopia's and no earthly king other than Haile Selassie I. Abuna Petros was subsequently executed by firing squad in a public square in Addis Ababa on July 29, 1936. Before he was shot, Abuna Petros pronounced an anathema against the people and even the very earth of Ethiopia if they ever submitted to Italian rule. The public execution of a senior hierarch of the Orthodox Church had apparently shaken the Archbishop. He was now reluctant to appear in public at the side of the fascist authorities and sent word that he would not be able to attend due to illness. This reply angered the Viceroy Graziani, who sent word that absence was not an option for the Archbishop, and so Avunak Erlos reluctantly proceeded to the palace with his entourage. However, his initial reluctance to attend would later be noted by the authorities and would be fateful. On the morning of February 19, or Yekatit 12, the elderly and the poor of Addis Ababa began to congregate on the grounds of the Gannat al-Ul Palace, the large Art Deco imperial residence that Emperor Haile Selassie had built on the expansive piece of land he had inherited from his late father, Ras Mokonnen. It was popularly known back then as the Little Gibbi, the Menelik Palace being the Great Gibbi. The viceroy, alongside the officials of his administration and the collaborating Ethiopian nobles and religious leaders, assembled on the portico at the front entrance of the palace to oversee the distribution of alms and receive homage. Somehow, the Italians had been warned that an attack might be in the works, and so heavily armed soldiers guarded the perimeter and were on the roof and balcony of the palace as well. It seems they were expecting an attack from the outside, not from people already inside the palace working for them. There were about 3,000 Ethiopians on the grounds of the palace that day. Very few would survive. Abraha Devoch and Mogus Askedom slipped into the grounds with no problem, as Abraha worked there and Mogus was a known employee of the fascist city administration. They positioned themselves close to the front steps of the palace. Marshal Graziani began the ceremony with a speech. He gave it in the style of his leader Mussolini, loud, with fury and exaggerated gestures. A few Ethiopian nobles then stepped forward to pledge their allegiance to Italy, and the Italian Air Force conducted a flypast. Then, at around 11 a.m., the poor approached in a long line to receive their alms and bow low before shuffling off. Just as the Italians began to relax their guard, somewhere out of view, there was an explosion. Then, in quick succession, 2 more grenades went off, one right on the portico where the important personages were standing. Graziani had turned to flee back into the palace and was struck in the back and legs. Quickly, more grenades went off in quick succession. It is believed a total of 10 went off. Pandemonium and panic spread. In the palace portico, the scene was bloody. The deacon who held the red umbrella of honor over the archbishop lay dead. Abunek Erlos himself was seriously wounded. The viceroy had been next to one grenade which went off as he fled, and 365 metal fragments entered his body. He was rushed to the hospital, where his life was saved in surgery. Vice Governor General Armando Petretti and General Liotta of the Italian Air Force were all severely wounded, with General Liotta losing a leg. Amid the chaos, Mogus Askedom and Abraha Devoch slipped out of the palace grounds and climbed into a car driven by Simona Defris, who whisked them out of the city northward towards the monastery of Debre Libanos. At the palace, the initial panic of the Italian authorities quickly switched to rage. The federal secretary of the fascist party, Guido Cortese, stepped forward with his revolver and shot first into the group of aristocratic collaborators and priests from various churches who had been ordered to the pageant, and then into the crowd of the poor who had assembled to receive alms. The heavily armed troops on the palace, in the grounds, and around the perimeter quickly followed suit and opened fire. The Ethiopians were unable to get away as the Italians had quickly locked all the gates. Except for a lucky few that hid under the bodies of their compatriots, the vast majority of the 3,000 people in the compound were machine gunned from the roof and the balcony of the palace and from the soldiers surrounding the palace grounds on the outside. As the crowds ran to and fro trying to get out of the compound, they were mowed down mercilessly by carabinieri, soldiers, and fascist blackshirts. Others who had been watching the proceedings from outside the compound were also rounded up and shot, as were simple passers-by who had no idea what was going on. A massacre of 3,000 unarmed young and old men, women, children, and clergy would be horrific enough, but this was just the beginning. The Italian leaders rushed to the hospital to find out the condition of the viceroy. Cortese went in to see Graziani and emerged with a message. The viceroy had given Italians carte blanche to take vengeance. Cortese would state to the assembled officials, "Comrades, today is the day when we should show our devotion to our viceroy by reacting and destroying the Ethiopians for 3 days. For 3 days, I give you carte blanche to destroy and kill and do what you want to the Ethiopians." The killing spread immediately from the palace and the hospital in the Sidiskilo Square and spread throughout the Arada heart of the city and beyond. For the rest of that day and the next 2 days, the fascists proceeded to kill Ethiopians not just with guns, but with knives, shovels, hammers, and clubs as they chanted Duce, Duce, and Civilita Italia. Ethiopian homes were drenched in petrol and set aflame, often with the residents trapped inside. The Italian fire brigade actually participated in torching these homes. If the occupants tried to escape, they were shot. The Blackshirts broke into the Cathedral of St. George, built by Emperor Menelik II to commemorate his victory over Italy at Adwa. They brought the high altar of the church out into the churchyard and set it on fire, and burned the inside of the church, gutting it completely. Hundreds of terrified Ethiopians took refuge in the consulates of foreign governments or the homes of their citizens. But the Italians went ahead and stormed the homes of Greeks and Armenians, killing those they found there, including the household servants. The fascists took this opportunity to carry out a directive sent by Mussolini as early as May 1936 for the execution of all the young Western-educated Ethiopians known as the Young Ethiopians, members of the aristocracy, particularly the Amhara aristocracy, and any suspected of having ties to the exiled emperor or to the Black Lion resistance group made up of cadets of the disbanded Holeta Military Officer School. A military tribunal was set up at the Alembekain prison on the day of the attack, and 62 people who were identified as belonging to one of these groups were shot dead. Any Ethiopian who had an education was an immediate target. There were horrific scenes of people tied behind and alongside trucks who were dragged to their deaths. Others were tied down and run over by trucks, tossed into the deep gorge under the Ras Makonnen Bridge. Others were hung from gallows. It was 3 days of utter bloodlust and mayhem. The Italian correspondent for the government newspaper Corriere della Sera published photographs of the massacre and called the event horrible, a shame for Italy. The Italian authorities alleged that only a few hundred people were killed in what they termed disturbances. Ian Campbell's 2017 book, The Addis Ababa Massacre, Italy's National Shame, however, estimates that 19,200 people were massacred over the 3 days. That would have been 20% of the city's population in those days. Most Ethiopian sources maintain, though, that 30,000 people were butchered between Yekatit 12 and Yekatit 14, which is February 19 to the 21st. However, this wasn't the end of it. The fascists calmed down after decimating the innocent population and began their investigation of the assassination attempt on Marshal Graziani, and were stunned to learn that it was carried out by 2 Eritrean members of their own bureaucracy. Bodies were collected from the streets and from under bridges and taken to the outskirts of the city at Guleli, where many were buried in pits and others were incinerated. Abraha Dabuch and Mogas Haskadum hid for a short time in Debre Libanos Monastery before heading west in hopes of crossing the border into the Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. Simon Adefris had remained with them at Debre Libanos for a week before returning to Addis Ababa. He was soon arrested and tortured to death. Abraha and Mogas reached Gojam in the west, a province where the rural areas were virtually all outside of the control of the fascists and full of various roving bands of Arbenya or Patriot Resistance forces. However, the deeply suspicious country people did not trust these men and ended up killing them both. Thousands of other Ethiopians of all social classes were rounded up and sent to concentration camps. Some were sent to Danani in the Ogaden. Prisoners at Danani received the bare minimum of food and water by order of Graziani and were made to toil on banana and sugarcane plantations and dig irrigation canals. Under conditions of terrible heat, horrible sanitary conditions, and many infectious diseases, scores of people died there. Others were sent to an even worse camp called Nokra in the Dahalak Islands of Eritrea, where the prisoners suffered from a lack of fresh water and fell victim to marsh fever, sunstroke, and dysentery. When Marshal Graziani learned that Abraha Daboj and Mogas Askadom had taken refuge for a time at Debre Libanus Monastery, his long-standing suspicion and loathing of the Orthodox clergy was further inflamed. He had noted Abuna Erlos's reluctance to come to the event, and so now came to the conclusion that the archbishop had been warned that the assassination attempt was about to take place. He now decided that the fact that the assassins had hidden at Debre Libanos indicated that the monks and possibly other senior hierarchs were co-conspirators. Indeed, the current abbot of the monastery, Echegge Gebre Georgis, had accompanied the imperial family into exile and was leading the Ethiopian exile community in Jerusalem. Thus, on May 19, 1937, Marshal Rodolfo Graziani, viceroy of the Italian East Africa, cabled the local Italian commander in Salali and ordered him to execute all the monks without distinction, including the vice abbot. On the next day, a force of soldiers arrived as the monastery was celebrating the feast day of its patron saint, Saint Taklahaimanot. The group under the command of General Pietro Maletti was made up entirely of Italian soldiers and Libyan colonial troops. They stood by until the church service was over and then rounded everyone up. All 297 monks and the 23 lay people who worked for them were shot and their bodies tossed over the towering escarpment there. They did not limit themselves to them, but also rounded up all the pilgrims that had come to celebrate the saint. They too were shot and buried in mass graves. It is estimated between 1,500 and 2,000 people were killed at the massacre of Debre Libanos. General Maletti and his Italian and Libyan troops then proceeded to thoroughly loot the treasury of Debre Libanos. They carried off the crowns of several Ethiopian emperors, their coronation robes, valuable vestments, and priceless manuscripts. None of these have ever been recovered. The aftermath of these massacres was intense. Around the world, news of these atrocities made a mockery of Italy's slogan that they had come to free Ethiopians from slavery and feudalism and would bring civilization and enlightenment to a backward people and state. The brutality of the fascists was laid bare, and it showed how truly barbarous they were. Ethiopians at home and in exile were plunged into horror and deep mourning as reports of these atrocities seeped out. Above all, these events lit a match under the resistance as both men and women of all ages took to the hills to fight against the occupier. The resistance grew in every region, and the areas that the Italians controlled shrank as attacks against Italians became commonplace, especially in rural areas, and so Italy was never truly able to exert control over the country in a meaningful way. Archbishop Abuna Erlos found that his position in Addis Ababa under fascist rule was now untenable. The fascists had become convinced that he had foreknowledge of the attack on the viceroy, and he felt unsafe. After the execution of Abuna Petros, the fascists had executed Abuna Mikhail, bishop of Ilubabor and southwestern Ethiopia, when they overran Gore, and he too refused to submit to Italy. The Yekatit 12 and Debre Libanos massacres convinced Abuna Erlos that the fascists could not be lived with as he initially thought. He went first to Rome to appeal to Mussolini personally about the plight of his church. Mussolini, however, had heard of Graziani's suspicions of the Orthodox clergy and treated the Coptic cleric with contempt. Abuna Erlos left Rome, not to return to Addis Ababa, but for Cairo to receive medical attention for the wounds he had received at Yekatit 12. He issued a denunciation of the fascists. The fascist authorities promptly proclaimed that the Ethiopian church would become fully self-governing and no longer accept archbishops appointed by the Coptic popes. They assembled a council of Ethiopian clergy who elevated the collaborating Abuna Abraham of Gojam in Western Ethiopia as the archbishop of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church in Italian East Africa in late 1937. He promptly appointed 6 new bishops. The Coptic Pope excommunicated these clerics, and the Ethiopian Church in Jerusalem rejected these collaborators, and the first schism of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church came into being. Abuna Abraham died barely a year later and was replaced as archbishop by one of the bishops he had appointed, Abuna Johannes. The way this schism was finally resolved will be discussed in another episode. In December 1937, recognizing that Graziani's brutal methods had inflamed the insurgency rather than suppress it, Mussolini relieved Marshal Graziani as Viceroy of Italian East Africa and replaced him with Prince Amedeo, Duke of Aosta, cousin of the King of Italy, and a much more gentle face for fascism. Marshal Graziani became Chief of Staff of the Royal Italian Army. In June 1940, he became Commander-in-Chief of Italian North Africa and Governor of Libya. Due to what Mussolini perceived to be failures in the Italian attempt to push the British out of Egypt, he removed Graziani from his command and returned him to Italy in March 1941. Over the next 2 years, Graziani played a role in suppressing Italy's anti-fascist movement. On July 24, 1943, the Fascist Grand Council and King Vittorio Emanuele III removed Benito Mussolini from government. Not long afterwards, King Vittorio Emanuele III of Italy renounced the thrones of Ethiopia and Albania as having been illegitimately acquired. All of Italy's marshals, including De Bono and Badoglio, stood by the king against the dictator, except for Graziani. Graziani clung to Mussolini, who appointed him Minister of Defense of his short-lived Nazi puppet regime known as the Italian Social Republic. Graziani was now on opposite sides from Badoglio, who was now appointed to head the Italian government by King Vittorio Emanuele. Marshal Emilio de Bono had sided with the king along with Mussolini's son-in-law, Foreign Minister Count Galeazzo Ciano. Both were captured by the Nazis and handed over to Mussolini, who had them shot on January 11, 1944. Graziani headed the mixed German-Italian force known as the Ligurian Army that saw some brief success against the Allied forces. When Mussolini fled north on April 25, 1945 in the face of Allied advances, he left Graziani in charge of what was left of the Italian Social Republic. Mussolini was captured along with his mistress, Claretta Petacci, 2 days later by Italian partisans on April 27 and executed the next day, just 2 days before Adolf Hitler committed suicide in Berlin. On April 29, the Germans in Italy surrendered to the Allies, and Graziani surrendered 2 days later. With thousands of fascists being lynched and assassinated, the Allies removed Graziani from Italy for his own safety, keeping him in North Africa until 1946, when they returned him to an Italian prison. In 1948, Rodolfo Graziani was sentenced to 19 years in prison for collaborating with the Germans, but was released after only 4 months after a legal appeal stated that he was only following orders. He did not serve any time at all for his actions in Ethiopia, nor did any other fascists. The sad fact is, neither Graziani, Badoglio, De Bono, or any other fascist was ever held accountable for the horrendous atrocities they carried out in Ethiopia. While the German Nazis and the Japanese imperial authorities were subjected to extensive war crimes and crimes against humanity investigations and trials, with many receiving death penalties or lengthy prison terms, there was no such process for Italian fascists. The United Nations War Crimes Commission was created to investigate allegations of war crimes committed by Nazi Germany and the other Axis powers in World War II. On December 31, 1946, Dr. Ambaye Woldamariam from the Ethiopian War Crimes Commission presented to the UN War Crimes Commission its preliminary findings against Graziani. This related, however, to the period before World War II as defined by the Allied governments as having begun in 1939 with the Nazi invasion of Poland. In spite of that, the Ethiopian government believed it had more than sufficient evidence to justify a trial against Graziani and other fascists, especially for the Yekatit 12 massacres. On March 4, 1948, charges against Marshal Rodolfo Graziani were presented to the United Nations War Crimes Commission. The commission was presented with evidence of the Italian policy of systematic terrorism and Graziani's self-admitted intention to eliminate the Ethiopian elites, and cited a telegram from Graziani to General Nasi, in which Graziani had written, "Keep in mind also that I have already aimed at the total destruction of Abyssinian chiefs and notables, and that this should be carried out completely in your territories. The UN Commission agreed that there was a prima facie case against 8 Italians, including Graziani. However, the Allies questioned the veracity of Ethiopia's claim against the Italians on the ground that it was impossible to identify which individuals in the Italian military hierarchy had actually issued the criminal orders. The British government, which at the time was exerting a suffocating limitation of action over the Imperial Ethiopian government, was the firmest supporter of that stance, and the United States pursued a policy largely characterized by ambivalence towards Italian aggression. The Ethiopian government made a direct request to the 4 policemen, which were the United States, the United Kingdom, the USSR, and China. But that was immediately rejected on technical grounds, namely that the crimes were committed before World War II's official start in 1939 and were thus outside the Commission's purview. In addition, many in the Italian press firmly opposed any Italian officer being put on trial for war crimes. Faced with such resistance and indifference, the Ethiopian government had no choice but to step back from their requests, to the anger of many Ethiopians. The cold, hard fact was that fascist figures like Badoglio and others were essential to the US and Britain to bolster the Christian Democrats against the communists in Italy, and charging them with crimes was unthinkable to them. It would not look good to charge the less essential Graziani and not charge Badoglio, who had been the father of chemical warfare in 1936. But even Graziani played a role useful to the West in keeping the communists from taking power in Italy, as he dabbled in neo-fascist politics, becoming honorary president of the neo-fascist Italian social movement in 1953. Thus, the fascists never paid for their crimes in Ethiopia. Marshal Rodolfo Graziani died on January 11, 1955 at the age of 72 of natural causes. Marshal Pietro Badoglio died on November 1, 1956, at age 85, also of natural causes. Guido Cortese, the fascist party secretary who started the shooting on Yekatit 12, joined the Italian Liberal Party and became a longtime member of parliament, even serving as a minister in Italian coalition governments in the 1950s. He also served as the president of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1956. He died on September 5, 1964, after what was described as a brief illness. He, too, was never held accountable for the bloodshed he helped to launch. Indeed, the only Italian senior figures to be punished in any way for the crimes of fascism were the House of Savoy, who lost a referendum on the monarchy and were expelled from Italy. The actual perpetrators were set free and even prospered in post-war Italy. Of the war criminals mentioned in this episode, besides Marshal Emilio de Bono, who was executed by Mussolini, only General Pietro Maletti, who conducted the massacres at Debre Libanos, died a non-natural death. He was killed in battle in North Africa in 1940. In August 2012, it was revealed that the equivalent of $160,000 of public money had been used to help finance the building of a large monument atop Graziani's tomb in Affile. The subscription was supplemented by private funding from the mayor of Affile, Ettore Viri, and others. The new mausoleum was engraved with the words "Fatherland" and "Honor." Local left-wing politicians and national commentators vigorously protested the building of this mausoleum, and when the Ethiopian community learned of this, they joined the effort and harshly criticized the monument. Public funding for the Graziani monument was suspended by the newly elected Lazio administration after the 2013 regional elections. A statement from Ethiopia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Graziani did not deserve to be memorialized, but should instead be condemned in history for his war crimes, genocidal behavior, and crimes against humanity. When Emperor Haile Selassie returned with the assistance of British forces to liberate Ethiopia from fascist occupation in 1941, one of his first acts was to gather the remains of the victims of the Yekatit 12 massacre from the mass graves at Guleli and reburied them with great honor at Holy Trinity Cathedral, where they rest to this day. He also erected the Yekatit 12 Memorial in Sidiskilo Square to commemorate the victims of this great crime. Mogas Askadom and Abraha Daboj, two determined young Eritreans have been enshrined as heroes of the resistance and great Ethiopian patriots. Bishops Abuna Petros and Abuna Mikhail have statues erected to their memory near the spots where they were executed. Both have been canonized as martyr saints by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Both the emperor's sons-in-law, Ras Desta Damto and Dejazmach Beyene Merid, were captured and summarily executed in 1937, as were the sons of Lu'ul Ras Kasa. The elderly veteran of Adwa, Dejazmach Balcha Safo, was also killed in a shootout after killing the officers sent to receive his surrender. The Prince Regent, Lu'ul Ras Imru, was captured and was taken and held in captivity in Italy along with others of the senior aristocracy. Emperor Haile Selassie's eldest daughter, Princess Romanuert, widow of Dejazmach Beyene Merid, was among these prisoners, along with her 4 young sons. She and 2 of her sons died in captivity and were buried in Turin, where they remain buried to this day. Many of those imprisoned in Italy were not able to return home for several years after the Ethiopian liberation until after the Allies freed Italy from Axis powers. There have been several movements in the past and currently underway to obtain justice for the victims of fascist atrocities in Ethiopia, and we will discuss these in our next Q&A episode.
The triumphal procession to Addis Ababa, led by a British colonel who rode at the head of the forces escorting the Emperor Haile Selassie back to the capital of his empire. This was indeed a dramatic moment. The Abyssinian campaign was nearing its conclusion, the first victim of Axis aggression was being restored to power, and the date chosen for his return was the 5th anniversary of the Italians' entry into Addis. At Mount Entoto, above the capital, the Negus went first to the Church of the Virgin Mary to offer prayers of thanksgiving. Then, continuing his journey by car, a British general by his side, he was given proof that the loyalty of his subjects had remained constant during his exile in Britain. All along the route, obeisance was made by the simple folk of his country, whose long suppressed feelings were now openly demonstrated. Nearing the palace, guards of honor were formed by Sudanese and by troops from South, East and West Africa. Some marched with the royal procession, others lined the streets. Finally, the emperor, on reaching his destination, received the personal greetings of the man chiefly responsible for freeing his country, General Cunningham. After formalities like the inspection of the guard, Haile Selassie spoke in Amharic to the assembled people. In his speech, he stressed his gratitude to Britain and the determination of his empire to fight on with Britain till final victory is won. Then he entered the palace so recently vacated by the Italians. Gone were the portraits of the Duce, gone too was the Duke of Aosta. In his place, the rightful ruler of the land.
Thank you for joining us for this special commemorative episode of Tarikamba. Please like and share our episodes and subscribe to our channel. Follow us on social media and send questions to me directly via solomon@tarikamba.com. Visit www.tarikamba.com for additional materials. Thank you, and see you again on the next episode of Tarikamba.
Yes. Aye, Selassie the first. Aye, Selassie the first. How excellent is thy name in all the earth. How said thy to thy soul, flee as a bird to thy mountains. Below the wicked bend their bows and make ready their arrows upon a string that they may privily shoot at the upright in heart. But if the foundation be destroyed, what can I the righteous do? But the Emperor Haile Selassie the first is in Zion. Thy highness in thy throne is in Zion. Thy eyes behold thy eyelids try the children of men. The eye tried the righteous, but the soul and the eye that love it violent majesty hated. Upon the wicked he shall raise sneers, fire, and brimstone, and a horrible tempest. But this shall be the portion of the cup. To the living eye in the eyes, last of the first, not the ways of the righteous. His countenance does behold the upright. Yes, sir. Give thanks and praise, sir. Yeah, man, that was a firm documentary. Like again, I said, and I will share the link. It's from a Tariq Amba on the Yekatit Azraulet, Iowa. Yeah, man, we give thanks for that portion there. As a brethren, Jeremiah highlighted, that there's portions of history, you know what I mean, that it just remind I and I, and spark I and I memory and even inform I and I was intrinsically of what took place at that time, man. Yeah, man, serious, man. One of the Eritreans that were planning this thing is a, let's say, Ashkadan. His last name is Ashkadan or so. Yeah, that's the last name of the same entertainer you Nipsey Hussle that passed away. His family is from Eritrea, likewise. His last name was Ashkadan. Yeah, man. And I have a commemorative medal likewise where His Majesty inaugurated, where it shows two women hugging, one with a crown, you know what I mean, and a smaller one representing Ethiopia and Eritrea. There's on it what Most High put together or what the Most High in nature put together can no one separate. For His Majesty, they joined together Eritrea and Ethiopia at that time. After that time. But you see, at the time of Ethiopia's invasion, there was no tribal dissension at that Iowa. Was Ethiopia against the invaders. Yeah, man. So I give thanks for them portion. You know, yeah, man. Powerful. Yeah, man. I have some sip I love to bring, but I would love to hear some reflection likewise, what one side of the documentary and the history of such a momentous occasion. Yeah, all right. Last yeah, man. Yeah, family, it's a joy same way, you know what I mean? Yeah, man, and I can share and so forward, this is a thing, like we said, we want to continue, and I want to inspire, people to look in the direction of this history. I know that there are loose ends, as the documentary highlighted, that a lot of these war criminals and these atrocities hasn't been accounted for. Yeah, man, because these were massacres. Thousands of people, men, women, and children. Clergymen, you know. This was coming from a nation who was said to be the world's supreme moral tone of religion, the Roman Catholic side. You know what I mean? Yeah, a prominent seat in the World Council of Churches, you know, what I and I Rastafari know as a mother of harlots, yeah, as written in the Revelation, you know. So as the time going up forward, you know, I look to seal up within a timing. Yet I say I want to bring certain sip, right? You know, if no the one a black a young, I will black of such higher, which is His Majesty's address to the League of Nations, his subsequent address after the 1936 address, the 1937 address. Yeah. And this is also pretty good. Yes, I am. Pretty high. Yes, I am. So they have a few points with His Majesty Black in his address that I would love to share. Likewise, I said there were different communiques sent to different organizations, you know, representing the liberation movement. There's another thing I noticed in the documentary upon His Majesty's return. They said there were soldiers lined up of the Sudanese army and soldiers from the south, the east, and the west of Africa. It seemed because they said the British were helping, assisting Ethiopia at the time. But the British didn't want to send their own British soldiers to go fight in Africa. So the colonies in which they owned in South Africa and East Africa and West Africa, they sent those soldiers. So you see while the Romans were pushing a white liberation tactic against I people subsequently by default were pushing a black liberation fight because the fighters were England sent was from the different regions in Africa. So and knowing that even in the West, the people of African descent did make that appeal to go fight for Ethiopia were denied from America to Jamaica, to various places in the West Island, yes? Yes, I. So this one is like Majesty Black. We subsequently felt that it was our duty to protest the Yekatit 12 massacre, whether or not the Geneva Assembly gave my statement due consideration. Yeah? The Lion of Judah, Haile Selassie I, elect of God, Emperor of Ethiopia. His Excellency Monsieur Joseph Avenel, General Secretary of the League of Nations, Geneva. I ask your excellencies, good officers, to pass the following to all members of the League of Nations. First, in violation of the covenant of the League of Nations, from the pitiful day on which barbarous Italy invaded my country, the ill-fated people of Ethiopia has suffered from countless atrocities, brutality, and misery. Today, those who died in battle are luckier than those who are suffering from recurrent torture at the hands of the brutal enemy. As a result of our deep sorrow, I appeal to the League of Nations and to the whole world about our misery and despair. Nevertheless, until now, our voices have not been heard. The nations have blocked their ears to our lamentations. However, hope has not yet vanished from our hearts. Had you been aware of the brutalities of our attackers, you would have given us a fair judgment. Today, the invader has doubled its barbaric acts. Outraged by the prolonged opposition, the Italian government aggressively has continued its brutal policy of exterminating a people who depended on the promise of the Charter to protect their freedom and to gain the goodwill of the world, and who believed that international agreements would be respected. I have not cited individual acts of brutality. I have restrained myself from accusing anybody without having undeniable and concrete evidence, preferring to verify what I have heard. Second, I present my case to the League of Nations and to the whole world about the three savage acts committed in Addis Ababa and its vicinity in February 1937. These comprise, first, the merciless executions of Ras Desta, the Jazmash Bain, and thousands of other nobles who were killed after being captured in the battlefield. The three-day massacre of thousands of people following the assassination attempt on Marshal Graziani. London newspaper has estimated 6,000 in number of Ethiopians were deliberately massacred. Permit me to attest that the number reported to me is much higher than this is estimated. All these atrocities were done in violations of the international rules governing warfare on land as defined in the fourth section of the Hague Treaty of 1907 about conventional war. The signatories of the Hague Treaty, out of their enthusiasm for supporting the even expanding obligations of modernization and the concomitant interests of mankind, resolved clearly to spell out and specify the laws regarding warfare. Consequently, along with the customs of the civilized nations, natural human laws, and according to the pressure of world public conscience, they declared that all people and belligerent nations should be governed by international laws. Third, the nobles who were captured on the battlefield were killed immediately. This constitutes an unjust execution which violates Article 4 of the Hague Treaty of 1907. Prisoners of war are in the custody of the enemy government and are not the property of the men or soldiers who captured them. Other than the money, weapons, horses, and documents given them for military purposes, prisoners should retain all personal articles. They deserve to be treated in a humane and compassionate way. Article 3 of the treaties forbids the execution of wounding of an enemy who has surrendered and has rendered himself defenseless by handing over his weapons. Yes, fire. And it goes forward in a few more articles, but this is highlighting as I say, His Majesty comes sharp higher. Because remember when they established the League of Nations, they established it not anticipating that they would have any Africans in representation. Just like the Berlin Conference, when they were cutting up Africa without any African in attendance. You know? So the rules in which they set for each other to respect, and which they anticipate no African to come into that organization. When the African come into that organization, that rules apply to the African, which they took at it with a grain of salt. And their inaction was proof to their sentiment. Yahweh. So I now give thanks to the light that was shining from that time to this time. Yes. So, there's more portions this year. As I say, the Rastafari, better side, the Rastafari family. This is reasoning hosted by the Naya Biggie House in Brooklyn, presented for the Martyrs' Day, celebrated from the mountaintops in Ethiopia and throughout the world, recognizing those heroes that stood up, even ones like Abuna Petros, of the Tawahedo Church, where they have a monument built up for him up by Sidis Kilo, if I'm not. Yeah, man, we give thanks, sire. We give thanks, sire. But this is I and I history, I and I Ethiopians have a glorious history. Yeah, man. So the floor is open to any reflection or any input or any document of the history which can even highlight certain things that I and I are not aware of or sharpen I and I iris and memory and knowledge of the history, And yeah, man, I and I are looking to seal it within the next half hour. So I and I give thanks to the word I bless family. The floor is open though. Rastafari. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, Lunga. Rastafari. Yeah, give thanks for that word, son, and power.
Hi. Yes, far right.
Yes, so while ones are considering whether to ask questions or add a strength within the fullness, and I will touch a portion of Her Majesty's autobiography in reference to the Iowa and also what was taking place abroad. The horrifying crimes done against our people by the fascist Italians, beyond surprising the world, motivated many of our friends to join us in our struggle. As it turns out, a genuine friend is tested in times of crisis.
Highly.
And the heavy challenge we encountered has enabled us to distinguish between a friend and foe. We cannot afford passing without mentioning the substantial support and political agitation which millions of Americans, particularly Black Americans, have made. There was a big organization named Union of African Natives Associations, founded to help Ethiopia. The organization established a newspaper called The Voice of Ethiopia and granted us substantial support. The following instances explain the types of support this organization had given us. To His Majesty Haile Selassie I, Fairfield, Bath, England. We Black Americans express to Your Majesty our sympathy at the recent audacious massacre of the loyal people of Ethiopia and pray for Your Majesty's well-being and Ethiopia's victory.
All right.
To the President of the United States, the White House, February the 4th, 1937. Dear Your Excellency, the President, in connection with the streamlined massacre of Ethiopians as a result of the bombing incident in Addis Ababa, the Executive Committee of the Union of African Natives Association, after holding an emergency meeting, has instructed me to send you a telegram as you are the president of 13 million Black Americans to request you to be involved in the matter in person so that you may preclude similar massacres of Ethiopians from happening again. Another letter, I will seal with this one, to the President of the United States, the White House, Washington, D.C. Dear Your Excellency, the President, in the presence of all its members, the Conference of the Union of African Natives Association has decided and given instructions to send this telegram to Your Excellency. Under the pretext of the bombing incident in Addis Ababa, the fascist government has detained about 2,000 Ethiopians under a state of emergency with the intention of exterminating them. We beseech you to use your office, which has earned you worldwide popularity, for your impartial attitude and your well-known sense of justice, to oppose the fascist government, if not in the name of United States of America, then as a personal act. Up to now, 1,400 people have been killed, while such barbaric acts are being committed by the brutal regime. The rest of the world has remained a passive and bewildered spectator. So far, no word of opposition has been heard. Although all of us are citizens of America, we feel strongly and pitifully about what is being done to the people of the continent whence our ancestors came. We solicit Your Excellency's support because of the fact that we have such a close relationship and racial affiliation. And knowing that there has never been an American president as compassionate and as benevolent in attitude toward mankind as Your Excellency. Since we have great confidence in Your Excellency, we believe that it may restrain the fascist government if you send some kind of message to the Italian ambassador in Washington. We would like to bring to your attention that the Black race has shown or has been able to show remarkable progress during your administration. You have shown that Blacks have souls and minds like everybody else and have worked with those who have free and good attitudes toward mankind.
When one section of mankind destroys the other, it is not usual, it is not unusual for the Union of African Natives Association, the social body which represents all our people, ranging from minors to seniors, to submit this appeal. We, the 13 million Black Americans, wholeheartedly believe that Your Excellency is the only one who can save the lives of 2,000 innocent people who have been condemned to death for a crime they have not committed. We would like to express to Your Excellency that all churches are praying for the well-being and long life of Your Excellency. Respectfully, William Lloyd Imes, President of the Union of African Natives Association. So, and I give thanks for that testimony that Her Majesty can even highlight it and make sure that it is part of his autobiography. As and I know that this conflict rose and stirred up Black men around the world, and the blood of those martyrs that was shed was not in vain, because it likewise helped to invigorate and stimulate more resistance against the fascist invaders. And it was clear from those who had knowledge of the massacre and the massacres taking place that Rome could not deny the truth that was being exposed. So some were still in ignorance. As the brethren highlighted, we're talking about a day and age when things were traveling by word of mouth and mail and person to person, more than everyone having a telephone line, much less internet and social media. So, and I give thanks for the resistance fighters and for those abroad, even as I know the history with, again, even Ethiopian World Federation and things that came out of the war to assist Ethiopia, where Her Majesty highlighted such strength, even within the donation of the land grant Shashamane towards those of the West who wish to return home. So all these are grounds for the stands that I are taking today, and being aware of information as part of your defense within the reasoning towards why I can make certain claims as royal sons and daughters abroad. So again, if anyone have any strength to add, or likewise any question, and I would love to get such sharpening, because each one teach one, and there's still more information that I know and I have not come across yet. And looking forward, again, as I say, to having a annual presentation and commemoration to encourage ones to put their mind in the state of the ones at that time, you see, who again could have lived a simple life and just become complacent with invaders. But instead, they rose to the call and showed the courage and bravery enough to make such an attempt, a noble attempt, and failure is better than petty success. So there are those who chose to live in bondage all their life because of fear of losing their life. And I don't hold on to that. Give thanks. That's the far right.
Yeah, man. Give thanks and praise Higher. Again, the floor is open, as a Virgin highlighted, for anyone who wanna block a sound of remembrance or any questions. Like I said, this is the family, and I are reasoning together, and highlighting these sips Higher is a thing why I ain't really do last year, nor the year before. So I are glad to be here, in this vibration, as it's been highlighted that, the day coincide with Mikael Day, in Ethiopia, you know, and as you know, it says, is Michael the Archangel go before the forces, you know, of the host of the Most High, who are arrayed in white garments. You know, so we give thanks for the Iowa and, you know, to see that even ones in Ethiopia are still commemorating these Iowas, dressed up in the military and hoisting the red, gold, and green. It's an honorable thing, Aya. To you know, keep these things in memory, Aya. You know, remembering the bravery, you know, the irony of these ones, you know. Yeah, these are I and I people. This is where I and I come from. Yeah, man, give thanks and praise. Yeah, and again, I and I give thanks for ones coming and seating up with I and I tonight still, you know, in observance of such Iowa, yeah? Yes, sire.
Yes, Congo. Another thing that I had mentioned in reference to the situation in Palestine, and I are aware that before the move on Palestine was accomplished with the Balfour Agreement, that Ethiopia was also proposed as to be a place that these Ashkenazi Zionists would have sought to occupy the mass exodus from Europe, as far as even, I believe, Uganda was proposed to. But
Yeah.
Ethiopia indeed was one of the first intentions that they would have wanted to capture. And you also had Hitler training priests, Jewish priests, to supposedly take possession of the Ark of the Covenant once Ethiopia was conquered. Another point that the brethren highlight was that fascists rise within false scientific declaration of superiority of the European race. And it was a time of great deception to justify the treatment of the races who were not Caucasians globally. And you had the incidents at the same time, like Jesse Owens, and so defeating the Germans and other track meet members during the Olympics. You had a black man who returned from World War I with weapons and started to take a stand within their local community here in America, fighting against Ku Klux Klan members, terrorism and racism and lynchings that were taking place. So the earth was right, as the prophecy declared, that out of darkness, those that dwell in darkness all their life have now seen a great light. That stance that was taken by Ethiopia, where many around the world were not aware that there was still a country in Africa that was never conquered, never colonized. One's assumed that fascist lie to be true, that you will still hear some Black people in this day and age make comments out of ignorance in reference to their own lack of prominence as a people and the greatness of other nations, not being aware of their own history. So the Ethiopian testimony is a great one. And the fact that the nation has been unconquered for all these ages is towards the reality of it being prepared as the place where the I Am himself, upon his advent on the earth, shall choose to establish his kingdom amongst men. So they shall not touch nor destroy my holy mountain. And this is what I witnessed, as the nations did gather together against the holy place, but the King of Kings and those who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. This is what I witness. So again, give thanks. And again, within the coming years, and I know there will be more highlighting of this, because as I said, even though it would be mentioned during the May 5th commemoration of the Ethiopian victory in the war, there still has not been as much detail highlighted towards what were the events that led up to it, who were the individuals involved, right? So again, give thanks for the workers in the vineyard, as and I know the war is ongoing for the heart and the soul and mind of the people. And as the king say, we Ethiopians shall fight if we find it necessary. And we know that we shall win, as we are confident in the victory of good over evil. And I saw the involvement of the Pope and the Vatican directly in World War II, collaborating with not just the fascists, but also the Nazis. And the term fascist is being used so loosely in this day and age that one may not even be too fully aware of what is fascism, because it's not just a dictatorship and the elimination of other political parties. Is also the collaboration of the government and business and corporate administration. And this is what I are actually seeing now unfolding more openly with these mega corporations who are affecting decisions of countries and making the people of those populations comply with decisions that companies and corporations are making, whether in the form of ESG, things that are being pushed by the World Economic Forum. Ethiopia has stood the test of time, where the different kingdoms that rose and fell, Ethiopia witnessed all of that. So give thanks as sons and daughters abroad, as His Majesty say, that I and Ethiopians are blood brothers, for our slaves did leave Ethiopia and forward to the west. Yes, sir.
Rastafari. Yeah, man, give thanks for the commemoration, Iowa. Give thanks in the memory of such. But we know that the Italians, the Romans, they come to Ethiopia on a vengeful vendetta, Iowa. When we know that they were holding a grudge even from the time of 1896, the Battle of Adwa. So this strong end here in Brooklyn, I will be gathering live and in living colors, chanting the Bingi chanting the of Full Eyes, commemorating the Battle of Adwa, 1422 Park Place here in Brooklyn. Yes, and I will be bringing to remembrance the whole scriptures like Revelations 12, pertaining to that great dragon that tried to catch the youth from he was young, tried to devour the woman's youth from as she come out the womb, Yeah, man. To go into Emperor Menelik in the gathering of the Ethiopian people from all different tribes and so forward, Yeah, man. Going against the Italians, that formidable force who they didn't expect to win, Yeah, man, I will be going up in such portion. Yeah, man, hopefully I can get to record it and share for those who can attend or maybe have some form of live of such. But this is what I do amongst I self. Yes, sire. As in the days of the Christ man and the Passover, when they had the breaking of the bread and the drinking of the wine, this was done as a symbology of representing the life of the Most High. You know, we must share this kind of life amongst I and I. Commanders not live by bread alone, but by the words of the Most High. You know what I mean? The word, sound, and power of the Most High. So that upliftment and instruction into righteousness, that reminder of these histories, bring I and I closer to that dignity and integrity, which I and I seek to hold up as Ethiopians. That people that were not has now become a nation, rising up to I and I self, as royal people, knowing where I and I come from, knowing what type of people I and I forefathers were, that these Irish are within I and I. Give thanks and praise, Hallelujah. So that's the first, you know, so yeah, you know, if there's not any sound or so, you know, and I will look to seal up soon, you know what I mean? Yeah, and I would love to hear any input from any of I and I brethren and sistren, you know. Not so I will seal up accordingly, yeah, man. Rastafari live it.
Yes, sir. And before I see you likewise, and I would encourage anyone who and I may not have their contact or info, whether email or phone number, to feel free to share it within the chat line so I can keep these things recorded and be able to reach out with information and words on and power towards a struggle in the future. As the brethren highlighted, and I observe in the Battle of Ottawa Eyes is the first, which is the Friday, and more events, likewise events in the future, specifically Isla Days. But there's so much things taking place right now in Africa that is a must finite to be more aware, become closer within consciousness one to another. So I know, as the letter said, friend from foe, because there's a serious eye with what is unfolding in Africa, to where some countries are taking the stand against colonialism, and some countries are collaborating with the colonialists against those who are taking the stand. So this has been a problem throughout the time. And even with the incident that took place, the Italians were informed that something may happen that day, because there will always be spies and collaborators among Sinai. This is the cause usually of what leads to Sinai demise and loss, that disgruntledness and misgiving feelings one to another can actually cause one to betray their brother as well as their country. And the more I have a bigger consciousness towards knowing the weakness of a one, and I would have more insight to try to help save that one from making such wrong decisions, because on the very battlefield itself, you had ones who changed their mind and left from supporting the Italians and joined Ethiopia.
Sure.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
I'd like to just read a brief portion again of another letter that was published in the Voice of Ethiopia. And this one was to the Lord of Canterbury, Lord Archbishop of London, England. Thousands of believers meeting in different places under the sponsorship of the Union of African Native Association condemned the brutal act of the Italian fascists for spilling in vain the blood of Ethiopian Christians who are fighting a just war for the independence of their country. The association also expresses its deepest regret over your silence as a representative and vicar of Christ, while heinous crimes are being inflicted on Ethiopia.
Right.
If I may continue, this one not long likewise to the Prime Minister of Britain. And remember that even though the population of England was very sympathetic to Her Majesty's cause, the leaders and the government chose to appease the aggressor and not take the right stand, even though Haile Selassie I was able to gain entry as a member of the League of Nations. These men actually violated the covenant and the treaties that were agreed upon. So this one is to the Prime Minister of Britain, 10 Downing Street, London, England. Dear Excellency, it is obvious that the people of Ethiopia, who are loyal to the Emperor and comprise 14 million of Africa's population, are in a dangerous situation. This happened as a consequence of the reprisals which ensued after a bomb was thrown at Graziani. The news from Rome and Addis Ababa holds that the fascist plan is to exterminate the Ethiopians altogether. We were deeply disheartened at this. 14,000 people were shot dead in cold blood. Your Excellency is aware of the situation, and then I can see as the letters are being posted over the span of time how the numbers increase. Right. Many thousands of church members congregated in different places by the Union of African Native Association have condemned the fascist brutalities and resolved in favor of the dispatch of this telegram. We appeal in the name of God and for the sake of humanity to world public opinion to stop the fascists from their brutal killings of the Christian people of Ethiopia. We appeal to Your Excellency in particular to hear your opposition to the wanton extermination of a people who are heroically fighting to safeguard the independence of their country, to continue to inflict incessant and brazen crimes against Black people is an obstacle to world peace and progress. We appeal to you to be prepared time and again to help and save Ethiopians. Please earn the immortal gratitude of the natives of Africa during this time of darkness and agony. Respectfully, Lloyd Irons, President, Union African Natives Association.
Gloria, give thanks and praise, Yeah, man. Yeah, man. The pen is mightier than the sword, The tongue is mightier than them both, Give thanks to the word, sound, and power, Give thanks to those effort at those times, You know, it shows where it reaches, that I and I can sip it in these times, You know. And, you know, I and I can even use these methods likewise, you know. Yeah, man, appeal to the conscience of certain heads of states and ones in certain position, you know, especially in this time when we see the world is on the brink of nuclear warfare. Yeah, man, you know. And I give thanks for the Iowa. And I give thanks for the memory of such Iowa. Yeah, man, His Majesty be over all the royal family. Why and I are the progeny of such. I and I are the sons and daughters of the survivors of great atrocities. The worst atrocities the world have ever seen. I and I are the sons and daughters of the survivors. And I has risen up to this glory. So I pray I Majesty be over I and I, over all the families and the households in the one's respective areas, that the health and strength be upon the wise mind, knowledge, and understanding of the Most High, to keep I and I in His good graces, to keep I and I in His tender mercies, to look upon I and guide I through the dark wilderness. Unto the I find salvation I. Give thanks and praise unto the I. For I will lift up I eyes unto the hills from whence cometh I help. And thy strength coming from the Most High Emperor Haile Selassie the First, who there was created Zion and earth. I hold the eye that keepeth Zion shall not slumber. The eye that keepeth I shall neither slumber nor sleep. But the eye is I keeper. The eye is I shade upon I
Right.
By the eye attention the sun shall not smite I by day nor the moon by night. My majesty I Emperor Haile Selassie the First shall preserve I in thy life. He shall preserve I in thy yarding out and I in thy yarding in. From in this highway even forever. Blessed be the name of the Most High. Highly eyes. That's
first.
Bless the eye continually. That you let the words of thy mouth and the meditations of thy heart be freely acceptable within thy sight, O thou Most High. Thou art thy strength and thy Redeemer. Thy long live it and reign it forever and ever. Yeah, you cause the light of the divine countenance to shine upon thine eye, even the face to shine upon thine eye. Bless and sanctify thine eye, that thine eye may be free from the will of thine enemies. This thine acts in thy praiseworthy name. Highly eyes, Selassie the First. Kadamawi, highly eyes, Selassie live.
First.
Forever and ever and ever. Yes, I better sab, one perfect love, and Fikiraya. Bless the eye. Continually, I. Rastafari family. Yeah, man. Till such time,
Rastafari.
Rastafari live.